How do you learn a language in less time using principles from the Chimp Paradox? Now, this book is very powerful because it teaches you how your brain works. And in relation to language learning, you can speed up the process and work with your brain to learn a different language in less time using these principles. Something you might relate to, for example, is if you're sitting down and you're studying a language or you're doing work towards something and it's quite difficult, part of your mind thinks, I don't want to do this. I want to go. I want to have more fun. This is boring. I don't like this. Let's have some chocolate instead. That is your chimp. That's one side of your mind trying to drag you away from the work. Your human side is trying to focus on that. It wants to progress. It wants to do really well at that language. Realistically, you've got two minds competing against each other. One is a chimp and one is a human. And in this video, I'm going to give you 3 tips or 3 areas of advice on how you can improve your rate of progress with language learning once you understand how your mind works and you can work with it. My name is James, I'm native in English, puedo hablar español e anche posso parlare italiano. I help people reach a conversational level in a different language. Part 1. What is this book and how can you manage your chimp to get better at language learning? Essentially, the Chimp Paradox is how your mind explains how your mind consists of 2 different sides to it. One is a chimp and one is a human. The chimp is very emotional. It wants things now. It wants to have fun. It wants to be happy right now. It doesn't care about the future, about planning or personal progression or anything like that. If it's bored, it will complain, and you'll know that because you'll get distracted by yourself and you'll think, I've got 15 million other things to do, and that's where procrastination comes in, when your chimp is not happy and it wants to do things different. On that note, many people struggle to fit language learning into their lifestyle, so I've created a free email course to teach you exactly how to learn a different language despite having a busy lifestyle. There's a link in the description below. Your human, on the other hand, is very logical. It is your part of your main personality where you have career, you have goals, you have dreams and hopes and things like that, and you want personal progression. This is the part of your brain that most likely wants you to learn a different language and is why you're watching this video. So, unfortunately, your mind is constantly in between these 2 parts at any one time, and your emotions can change, and that's your chimp adjusting your way of thinking. And alternatively, you could get really inspired. You can get inspired and motivated by something that you hear or see, and that's your human kicking in. Your human wants you to do well and achieve successful things in the future. However, it's hard to manage this because your chimp, your emotional side of things, is quick and powerful, and it's hard to manage it. You cannot control your chimp. You can only do things to help your chimp and human get along. So, how can this information help you when it comes to language learning? Well, first of all, language learning is quite a disciplined process. It can be fun if you make it fun, and if you know what you think is fun, what's fun to you, then you can work with that and basically do things that you do language learning activities that don't bore you. However, we all have to do things like homework or grammar or things like that outside of the lessons, and we can never get ourselves just to sit down or just to focus on what we're learning, on grammar or learning new vocabulary. So, what is the reason for this? Well, it's because your chimp side of your brain wants fun and entertainment and wants something different. Your human wants to sit down and focus. Your chimp is more powerful though. So quite often, if you try and sit down and book time in to study this grammar that you're learning, you're not going to do it because your chimp is overwhelming. An alternative way of doing it, the solution, is you manage your chimp, which means you negotiate with your chimp and you say, look, I know you want to do this right now, but there's 2 things you can do. One is while you're studying or while you're doing the thing that you don't really like and it's a bit tedious, you eat or drink or you do something that's rewarding at the same time to distract your chimp. That is one option. So while your chimp say, oh, James, I don't want to learn Spanish, I want to do something else instead, you then say, look, okay, have a cup of tea, have a coffee, have some chocolate, that's nice. Obviously, be careful what you eat, because if you study languages regularly and if you have a lot of chocolate, then that can be bad. But think of something similar along those lines, basically. You do something that your chimp enjoys to shut it up and to let you focus on the work. Alternatively, the other option to distract your chimp is to promise it that after you finish the work that you're doing or the exercise that you're doing, you will do something fun. So it might be 12 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon and your friends want to go out or do something at 2 p.m. You have a couple of hours now to sit down and study. Your chimp doesn't want to, but you can say, look, we'll have fun after doing this work. We'll just do this grammar exercise now. It'll only take a few minutes. We'll get it done. And then afterwards we can go out, or afterwards you can have a can of Coke or coffee or something that you enjoy. So you're making a promise to part of your brain, part of your personality, your chimp, your emotional being inside your brain, that you'll get rewarded later. And that's the key here. You cannot miss the reward. You have to reward it afterwards. Otherwise, next time you negotiate with yourself, you'll say, Well, I didn't get reward last time, so there's no point, why bother? So you need to follow through with your deal. But that's what it takes essentially. Either while you're doing the activity, make it fun. Try and do something that you enjoy to start with. If you don't like sitting down and looking at grammar, watch YouTube on grammar or something, or use Anki flashcards to learn grammar in context of phrases and things. So do things that you find more entertaining. Maybe even listening to songs. Then it's not really homework or study. It's just having fun. Your chimp will like that then. So number one is focus on managing your chimp, and if it gets annoyed or wants to do something more fun, distract it, either when you're doing the work or afterwards. Point number two, goblins and gremlins. Now, these are negative self thoughts that we have inside our brain that we might not be aware of, we might not notice. For example, I might have had a bad experience in the past where I tried to speak a bit of Spanish and some native Spanish people laughed at me for trying. And I'm like, what's that? I might have then told myself that, James, don't speak Spanish because your voice when speaking Spanish sounds ridiculous and people laugh at you. I have then taught myself that I shouldn't practice Spanish because it feels bad. I have a negative emotion attached to that. And that's essentially a gremlin or a goblin, depending on how you look at it. And that is a negative self thought in your mind. Now, these are hard to remove, but they are possible to remove. You can do it. How do you remove it then? How do you change that into a positive? Well, the solution to this is you have to gain evidence of the contrary. You have to gain evidence that you don't sound ridiculous and that you can have a conversation with natives. So to do this, it'll be difficult, but you have to try speaking with natives, having a conversation, and seeing what the result is. You could even do this when on holiday. If you look up the word for could I have the bill, please? And you try it and say it to a waiter or waitress in their language and they respond normally to you. That's one bit of evidence that you're not getting laughed at when you speak a different language. If they don't laugh at you, perfect. You can now go back into your mind and your mind now knows that, oh, actually, there's some evidence that counters this. Let's listen to it. Now, it will take a lot of different attempts to change the evidence and to build up new evidence over time, but this is possible. It's not a fixed mindset you can change. The third point I want to say is we all have autopilots, and autopilots can be great for language learning. Autopilots are when you're driving or when you're doing something and you're not really thinking about what you're doing, but your senses are all active and doing the thing that you're supposed to. Like if you're driving, you're changing gear, you're looking at where things are, and you can be daydreaming. That's your autopilot kicking in. However, this is really good when it comes to language learning because we can often understand what native speakers speaking in a different language are saying or communicating because we're really good at guessing things and putting things together. This doesn't always work, however, but it's quicker than the human at thinking. So the autopilot is a third component of this whole Chimp Paradox equation. It's where the computer is. Think of it as a computer and a program on the computer where both the chimp and the human can access that computer for information. Either things that you know, facts and figures, or experiences that you've had in the past. They're all stored in the computer. And from that point, they can access different things when they need to. So if you're on autopilot, your human is relaxing and your chimp is also relaxing. They're not really active. It's just autopilot, walking, you might be walking to work or something, you might be listening to music, and you're pretty chilled, you're relaxed. As soon as something happens though, something requires your attention, your chimp kicks in first, then your human kicks in second. But without going into too much detail, what the autopilot is good for in terms of language learning is guessing and working out what people are saying based on the context and what's going on around you. And that happens very quickly. So what you can do is trust that even though you might not understand every single word in the language you're practicing, if you're in a conversation with someone, have confidence that your mind will work it out as you go along, so you don't have to understand every single word that's being said to you. If I'm in a restaurant, for example, it might be at a point where I'm being asked, what drink do you want? And the waiter or waitress might come over and ask me if I want a drink in Spanish. I might hear the word in Spanish, but nothing else. But based on the context, my autopilot is kicking in and thinking, wait a minute, James, you're in the context here, what could be happening? It might be thinking, I know what's happening here, right? I'm probably being asked this if I want a drink, therefore respond like that. So then I can respond straight away. So your autopilot means that even though you don't know every single word that's being said to you, you can get the gist of it and manage to get by a bit at a time. And this is very powerful because it allows you to practice or put yourself into situations where you don't know the language, but that's how you learn incredibly quick. Because what happens is your brain understands what it needs to, and in the surrounding words of that conversation, it saves as part of that context. So it remembers that the word for drink or would you like in that context is what it is. Because you've heard it and you're like, okay, I'll assign that memory of that situation to this context. So at this point, my language learning advice on your autopilot inside of your brain is Don't worry about not knowing every single word if you're going into a situation and trying to practice with a native speaker. If you know a few key words, like want, drink, I, then someone can understand, oh, okay, there we go, you want to drink. And the same goes when you're hearing something in Spanish or Italian or the language that you're learning. If you hear key words and join it up with the context, your autopilot can automatically, most times, work out what's going on. Sometimes it gets things wrong, but the benefit of the positives of the autopilot, like understanding what's going on in the context, outweigh the chance of annoying someone or saying the wrong thing, because ultimately, if you're trying to say something in someone else's language, they will appreciate that massively. So that's it. Ultimately, your approach and your thoughts and feelings can be changed over time. Nothing is set in stone. But if you understand that you have a chimp and you have a human all working to fight against your time and your actions, you can be conscious about what is limiting you when it comes to language learning and do something about it. If you've experienced any of these things before, or if you find it hard to focus, let me know in the comments below, and maybe someone in the comments can help you out with their approach to doing things if it's helped them as well. So that's it. Thanks for watching. If you found this video valuable, please give it a like. It helps me massively to grow the channel. And if you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. Thanks, and see you later.